Hey guys, Kevin Ismail for Blindspot, Season 1, Episode 2, A Stray Howl, and I was really looking forward to this episode. The premiere really surprised me. I didn't think it was going to be as good as it was, and I really seemed like this was one of the more promising fall shows. And I have to say that this episode was good. I thought this was a good episode, not a great episode by any means. I think last week's was a lot stronger. Definitely, I think it was a lot stronger. Mainly because of the way this episode went. I mean, there are things that I really loved about this episode, and there are some things that I really don't like that the show is doing. And I'll get into that. I still thought this was a pretty solid episode. I will tell you guys, though, the case in this episode, I really did not care about. I'm going to talk about it, but I really did not care about. It didn't seem that distinctly different from the first episode, and if this show is just going to be, oh, here's a tattoo on her back, and here's some crime that's connected to it, that's interesting, but I want to know more of the history that, is going on with them, and, I want to know more about them, and maybe stretch their story out a bit more, because I don't really like the way they're handling it, but I do feel it's gonna get better. But let's get into this. Now, the episode started off very strange. We see, all these explosions, and we realize that Jane is basically going through memory tests, and she's being questioned by Borden, and they're both physical and mental, and she does this, she does that test where they ask you to look at a picture and tell you how it feels, and it causes her to remember the same recurring image, that same image that she saw last week of her training where she shoots a pistol on the gun range, and she remembers being in a church, basically she keeps remembering just shooting this gun with that guy who we don't know his name yet. I'm gonna call him Guy with the Beard because I don't know his name yet. I feel really stupid that I'm calling him that, but we don't know his name yet, so obviously I can't call him that. I'm just gonna say her trainer. So basically, out of nowhere, this remembers her, this basically triggers her to remember being in a church, then shooting a nun. And this was really interesting. What I'm thinking is that this person was undercover. They weren't actually a nun, and that she basically, is making herself think that she killed a nun. I don't actually think that, she killed a nun. I think that this person was undercover and was imposing as a nun, and they were a threat, and that's why she had to take her out. So that's really what I feel is going on there. So while I think it is going to scare Jane, I think as time goes on, she's going to start to think, wait a second, I was Secret Service. There's no way I was going to just kill her, for that reason. What I really love we got in this episode was development with Kurt Weller, because like I said last week, he was kind of a blank. He was kind of a blank slate like Jane Doe is. And yeah, that's interesting, but he knows stuff about himself, and it didn't seem like they were going to do much with him other than just be a cop, and we get a lot more with him in this episode. He is with his sister, and basically she wants him to go to Taylor Shaw's memorial, and Taylor Shaw was this girl that he knew when they were 10 years old, and she went missing since then, and she has not been found or heard of since. So obviously he doesn't really know where she is, and he obviously doesn't really know what's going on there. However, he can't really focus on it because work is just too busy, and basically he really doesn't have any time to kind of take a moment and think about, which kind of sucks because obviously this is something that he's thinking about. He wants to know where this friend is because she's been gone since she was 10, and basically at the FBI headquarters, they just received news of Chow's death, but see surveillance of Jane's trainer leaving, but identified due to his mask, so they don't realize that it's him. Jane doesn't recognize him either from, her flashback, obviously, because he's masked, and Patterson basically has a discovery for the team, though, because we see another one of Jane's tattoos is a hidden code, and it's unlocked through Chow's apartment address, and the code reveals a man named Arthur Gibson, who basically is a former Air Force pilot, and this character, Arthur Gibson, I really like where they were going with this, but they just didn't do too much with it. It wasn't that different from last week. It wasn't that different, and I want them to do just something a bit different, change it up a bit, make this be more than just another FBI show, because this was very much just like a typical episode of NCIS or something. This storyline at least. They did do some good stuff in this episode though. So basically, Jane wants to go, and Kurt actually says that he does want her to go with them, which Bethany is saying, oh, well, you didn't want to, but he said that he was wrong, that she is a good asset to them, and that this could help her with her past and everything. I'm happy that he's not going to be this guy that's just like, oh, no, 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 you can't go with us, because I thought he was going to do that, and I thought that was going to get annoying. So I'm happy that he realized that, yeah, they do need her, and that she does need to help them, and that she's basically the key to getting them to where they need to be, and I definitely like seeing that, because I thought he was going to be like this real hard ass that was hard on her all the time, and I'm happy that's not what happened there. So, basically, Kurt, Jane, and his team go to visit Gibson, but he's clearly upset at their visit. He doesn't reveal anything, really. Like, he's just not really answering any of the questions, and when they leave, the house blows up out of nowhere. It just blows up, and we don't know why, but the house blows up, and basically, the FBI's are unharmed. As the ambulance and fire department arrive, there's no body found, which means that Gibson had a safe route out and blew up the house to hide any potential evidence. So clearly there's something he's hiding here, and this I thought was definitely very interesting. And basically, Kurt decides to talk to Air Force Officer Mrs. Powers, who says that Gibson suffered PTSD after serving as a top pilot in Afghanistan. And she claims that he was shaken from civilian deaths and put on lower administrative Air Force work. And many times, though, she doesn't really answer the question. She's saying that it's confidential information. And obviously, Kurt is thinking she sounds very shady, obviously, because she's not revealing what he wants her to reveal. There has to be a reason why she's not doing that. Obviously, there's something that she knows that she doesn't want him to know, and obviously, he doesn't really trust her right now. So, what we don't get in this episode, I will talk about. We don't get it all in this episode. We do see Bethany in this episode, but we don't get anything with that whole storyline we got last week, that really good cliffhanger of Bethany with the embezzlement and the murder. What the hell is that about? Why was she upset about it? We don't get any of that in this episode. So, I don't know if they're just going to forget about this. I don't know if they're going to talk about this in a future episode, but this is one of the most compelling, plot lines that they left us off with last week, and I really want them to delve deeper into it, and if they don't, I'm going to be pretty pissed, because there goes a really good potential for a character that is pretty much a blank slate at this point, and you could have done a lot with her, but they don't. And I know this is only episode 2, but they're giving Kurt Weller more. You would think that because they introduced the Bethany thing, they would try to give her more, and they really don't in this episode. Mainly because the episode's so focused on Gibson and everything, and this show becomes very scattered at points, definitely. I will definitely say that. And you really do see in this next scene here. So basically, after doing some research, they find Gibson was actually promised to certain positions after Afghanistan, and meaning that Powers is not telling the entire truth. He wasn't actually, there were different things he was doing, so clearly there's something she's not telling them. So Gibson then takes an Air Force specialist, Alec's daughter, hostage and threatens to kill her, and this was really interesting, and if he doesn't listen to his commands, Gibson forces Alec to retrieve a device that controls UAV drones, and he uses this drone to attack and kill Powers. Which I was pretty upset about, that they killed her off, because, again, there goes a really interesting plot point, and they just killed her off. I thought that was kind of annoying that they did that. I do like seeing Gibson, take some action here, but he's just not that threatening because we just met the guy, and I know this is a procedural show, but you guys know procedural crimes for me is that you have to make the killer memorable, and Gibson was not that memorable because he didn't do anything that much different from Chow. He killed some guys, he exploded some things, he didn't do anything that much different, and maybe his character was different, but his motivation might have been different, but he just wasn't that different from Chow, and that's kind of my problem here. So Kurt and his team begin researching more about Gibson, while his partner Ramirez believes it was premature to go to Gibson's house just by blindly following Jane's tattoo, and Kurt disagrees, saying that they wouldn't have discovered Gibson then, and basically Kurt and Bethany question a general in the Air Force who's unresponsive at times but gives details about Gibson, and he says that Gibson was the most effective killing machine in the Air Force but doesn't know why he would be doing these actions such as killing Powers in public through drone strikes. And Kurt wants more answers. The girl is still hostage. He doesn't know why she's hostage, but she is. So clearly there's something more that Gibson has up his sleeve that nobody wants him to know. And basically, then we get this scene that I really loved, but it kind of came out of nowhere here, definitely. Because you can see that Bethany can tell that Kurt is pretty stressed out, and she sits with Kurt and understands frustration due to the anniversary of Taylor Shaw's disappearance, and Kurt then proposes an idea, and I didn't really like the way they handled this. As I told you guys last week, I really feel they're already revealing too much about Jane Doe. I really do. I feel they need to do this a lot more gradually. They need to do this a lot more slowly. I know that would annoy people, but if you want to keep this interesting, you can't just reveal all this stuff at once. And this was the perfect example of what I don't want them to do. What they do in this episode, I do not want them to do, and I'm going to be really pissed off if they do this. So basically, he proposed this idea he's been feeling, and he believes that Taylor may be Jane Doe because there's a slight scar on her back neck, and basically we realize that the scar on her neck, it scared him because basically when him and Taylor were playing once, she fell, got a cut on her neck, and Jane has the same exact scar as Taylor. That I thought was really interesting. That I definitely really liked. I like that I thought that was interesting, but I don't like that we already have a possible, this person could be Jane Doe. I don't like that. What they should have done is give us little pieces of information about Taylor Shaw. That's what I wanted. Little piece of information here and there. And then episode 5, because they have been renewed for at least 9 more episodes. I don't know if it's going to go on for more than that. We'll have to see. It'll probably get picked up for a full season. I do see that happening for this show. But little piece of information here and there, like I said. And then, like, episode 5, then you could have delved deeper into this. I just feel they're doing things too quickly. And I don't want the show to get boring. The show is really interesting right now, but it has potential to get very much like, oh, this is just another police show. And I don't want that to happen. I want it to stand out. And that's something that the Blacklist did very well. And a lot of people are saying this is a new Blacklist. If it continues doing this, though, that's not good. Because what the Blacklist did is that it dragged out, Red's storyline and the connection between him and Elizabeth Keene. It dragged it out, for a very long time. They really didn't delve that deep into it until, like, episode 11. That's really when they started to get more into it, season 1. Yeah, I quit that show because I couldn't keep up with it, which is too bad because I really love that show, from what I saw of it at least. But Blindspot just seems like this is way too fast-paced. I really love the slow pacedness of the beginning of last week's episode, and I'm not a fan of them really doing all this right now. Now, Kurt basically realized was also the last to see Taylor before she disappeared, and his name is tattooed on her back, and that's kind of why he feels that's the way it is. So, even with these possible elements matching up, Bethany doesn't believe that Taylor could be Jane's identity, which is obviously understandable. It kind of feels like it came out of nowhere, and I can completely understand why Bethany is like, there's no way that she can be Taylor Shaw, because it just doesn't really connect yet. I mean, there are some things that connect here and there, but I just don't want them to reveal this too early. Really, I don't. Because then we get right back to Gibson. This scene just felt really out of place to me, and I really felt if they wanted to do this in a better way, they should have focused more on Taylor Shaw and less on Gibson, which I do feel we're going to delve more into Taylor Shaw as the season goes on. But this episode specifically, if they wanted to do this, they should have focused more on Taylor Shaw, because Gibson is what took up most of this episode. So that scene, while it was very good, did not need to be in this episode. It really did not. So, after the wreckage from Gibson's house, they find a small safe with an unopened laptop. The laptop has minimal information, but a brief Word document which details 5 accidents over the past years which were claimed oil leaks in the news. And all these accidents, former Air Force Ivan Musgrave is in the news story. So basically, Kurt and his team see this as a clue from Gibson that Musgrave is involved with. And after finding him in his apartment, they take him outside to talk, and he's unresponsive, but Kurt explains that the situation of Mrs. Power's death and how he took the girl hostage and more and more from the talk. And he then says that the Air Force has ruined him, making him suffer PSD, paranoia, and worse, unpredictability. And Musgrave says he caused those 5 accidents, which actually drone attacks, and he turned Gibson in. So he actually was the one that did it, and I thought that was really interesting that we found that out. So basically, Gibson's not the one that did it, so it was all Musgrave, and that I thought was definitely very interesting. So, Jane Doe then sees a man that was her trainer from her flashback watching them. She correlates how he was in the hospital and tells Kurt. However, Kurt doesn't focus on that as he realizes that Gibson is now trying to get back at everyone in the Air Force, which means this could include Musgrave. And I'm just thinking, you're trying to find out more about her. Why not let her go off and try to figure out what's going on? I understand you have, this mission, but aren't you trying to figure out who she is? Don't you want to know more about her? Like, I understand that. That's a way to drag out the story. Do things like that. That I like. But again, he's supposed to be very focused on Taylor Shaw, and then the next second he's not focused on Taylor Shaw. It just doesn't really make sense to me. It felt like they tried to do too much with this character in this episode, and they had some good ideas, but it just didn't really work. So since they're on broad daylight, Kurt rushes everyone to go back into the apartment complex for safety, but at the same time, Gibson's drone attack occurs. They luckily were inside enough to only suffer minor injuries, so basically everyone's okay, and that was very uneventful, I have to say. What we got there I thought was kind of uneventful. So, back at the FBI office, the team is trying to figure out where Gibson is and who he could attack next, and the general explains a switch change between Air Force pilots occurs every 12 hours on top of the FBI office. Now, Kurt deduces that this could be Gibson's next target. So the shift change is in an hour. So the team goes on a frenzy to think where he could be. And Patterson finds that Gibson owns 2 buildings in Brooklyn. And Jane and Kurt head to that one building. And it very much is reminiscent of last week's scene, though. It didn't feel that different to me. That's my thing with this, is that while I like some of the twists, like the thing that, Musgrave was the one that did, and that he turned Gibson in, that I thought was interesting, this very much felt like the same scene with Chow. Very much. So, basically, Kurt finds Gibson while scooping the top as Jane stays in the car, and a shoot occurs between them, and Gibson finds a way to escape in his own car, and Jane drives a police SUV and sets off a freeway chase, and after getting close enough, she causes both cars to crash. Jane's unharmed, but remembers the nun killing flashback again, and her taking a flash drive from the nun. So now I'm kind of thinking now what ended up happening is that Jane was undercover, and that this person that was the nun was actually working with Jane, and that she basically was forced to kill this person in order to protect her cover, and that I think is definitely very interesting. This I really like. The thing with the nun, that I definitely really like. The thing with her possibly being Taylor Shaw, I'm just not a very big fan of. Little piece of information like this, though, this is really interesting because this is what keeps me interested, is why she would have this flashback of the nun. So Gibson's alive, but caught as Kurt followed from behind. He gets the girl on hostage free. They both successfully stop a major drone attack as Gibson's in custody, and basically that's what happens there. So basically they save the day, and everything's okay with that. So back in the office, they get confirmation that the man in the beard was not a doctor, so a new investigation is set for him. They know right away that this guy was not a doctor and that something else going on there. So Kurt talks to his sister again, tells her that Jane could be Taylor, and Bethany has asked for the prints from the old case files to be sent in order to test if Jane is Taylor, and Kurt's sister is happy because it means that their father could finally be innocent. And basically, this was really interesting because it's revealed, but again, this felt like something they should have waited for a later episode. We realized here that it's revealed that their father was accused of kidnapping and killing Taylor when they were young, even though the evidence was weak. There was no evidence to prove this. And again, while I like this twist, I think this is really good, and I think this is definitely very interesting, it just, again, feels like there's way too much in this episode, definitely. I had a lot of problems with this storyline. I really want them to drag this out and not spend, just 2 episodes on it. This is a really compelling storyline, and I really want them to do more with it, and it doesn't seem like they are. It already seems like they're revealing too much, and I'm not a fan of that. So then the ending of this episode is really interesting. We see Jane's in her home, recovering from a long day, but then is taken hostage by her trainer by the end of the episode, and that's basically how the episode ends. Now, why this guy wants to talk to her, we don't know yet. Obviously he's her trainer, he's probably going to tell her more what's going on. But again, I'm worried that next week's episode is just going to reveal way too much, because again, this felt like something you include in a mid-season finale. That's what that seemed like to me, is at the ending of this episode, that's something you do in a mid-season finale. I don't know what's going to happen with this. I don't know what this guy is going to say to her. But this, I think, is going to be very interesting because we're definitely going to find out more about him. Like I said, I'm really enjoying the show so far. I really am. I don't like the way they're saying everything about the Taylor Shaw mystery at once. I want to keep the mystery of her character out there. I want us to, be interested in her character. I want to be interested in this storyline. I don't just want this to be, Taylor Shaw was this girl that was with Kurt and things like that. I don't want that to be the storyline. I want it to be a lot more than that. And they have the potential to do that. They have the potential to make this a lot more and make it a lot more, intriguing and things like that. Right now, at least, it's just not. It's not that intriguing because now we already know 90% of the story. We already know that his father was accused, him and his sister's father was accused of murdering Taylor. We know that she had a scar on her neck, like Jane. We know that he's known her since she was 10. It's too much. The thing with Jane and the nun is very interesting. I really feel that the nun was someone that Jane worked with, and that's why she killed this person, because she wanted to protect her cover and protect her own ass, basically. That's why she did that. So that, I think, is definitely very interesting. Now, let's talk about the whole Taylor Shaw thing. Now, why would she be Taylor? If she was Taylor Shaw, what I'm thinking is that she enlisted in, the Marines or whatever she was in, the military she was in, basically Secret Service, I think she was in. I don't remember, but basically she enlisted basically to cover her, herself up, because obviously she was kidnapped and she didn't want people to find her, so that makes sense why that would happen. But that definitely is very interesting. But again, we really didn't see too much with Bethany in this episode. Really not much at all, and I was kind of annoyed that we didn't really see anything with that. I wish we would have, because Bethany can be one of the more compelling characters of this show, and I don't just want her to be the director of the FBI. I want her to have that storyline. I want her to be interesting, and right now, if they don't give her, the storyline that we got last week, she's not going to be interesting, and I want her to be interesting. As far as these weekly characters, my problem with this is that these we could get some information here from these characters. What I want them to do is get one piece of information from these characters every episode. One piece of information. Like, have them somehow connected to Jane. We're not seeing much connection really here at all. We're really not. There's not one point where they've really said, oh, I recognize you, or, oh, I'm doing this for a reason. We're not really seeing why they're doing this and what their concrete reason is for doing this, and why this is connected to Jane, and why they would put this, why they would bring her to the FBI, which, yes, Kurt does question next week. We do see in the promo next week that Kurt asks, why would they bring her to the FBI? I do understand that. But we already know who her kidnapper is. We already know too much about her, in my opinion, and there's more stuff they probably can reveal, but it just is not going to be, the mystery is sort of winding down already, and we're only on episode 2, and I want that mystery to be there. And I know for a lot of people, they don't like waiting. I like waiting. I like dragging things out, because the payoff is always great. When you drag things out, it's more interesting because it keeps the viewer intrigued. If you want to keep, viewers, and you want to get good ratings on the show, and you want this to be one of your highest rated shows, you can't just reveal everything in one episode. I'm not saying they are, but they definitely are very close to doing that, and that definitely is a definite problem I'm having with this show, and I really don't want them to do that. They also had to find a way to make the weekly crimes, the weekly criminals, distinctly different, because Gibson and Chow was not that different. They both were terrorists, they both had agendas, they both did things, and they just were not that interesting in the long run, and I want them to do more with them. Honestly, they should not have killed Chow last week. They should have kept him alive, because what I want them to do eventually is have all these criminals come together and show they're all connected. Eventually, they're going to do that, but I want them to do that at some point. I don't want them to just kill off these characters, which they killed off Chow, so that's a red flag right away, but Gibson is still alive, so maybe Gibson can give Jane some more information what's going on, get us more interested. That's just what I want from the show. I want more mystery. I like the procedural stuff. I'm not saying that. I do like seeing the FBI go after these threats. I understand that's part of the show. But I want to be intrigued. I want the mystery to stay there, and I want the suspense to still be there. And that's really it for my review of this episode. I thought this was a good episode. Don't get me wrong. I really am enjoying this show. But it's just a bit frustrating when they're revealing so much in one episode, and I really hope they don't continue to do this, or else I'm going to get bored, which I really don't want to happen. I'm not bored yet. I really like the cast. I really like the show overall. But I really feel if they continue to do this, I'm going to get very bored, and I don't want that to happen. But let me know what you guys thought of this episode. Do you feel they're revealing too much? I personally think they are. And I will see you guys in my next review, which will be for the series premiere of Grandfathered, and I will see you guys for that. Okay, bye.